We're getting ready to do the trim around the, I'm going to show you the issues we ran into and explain why we had problems. And I'll show you what we did to fix those issues. These are the pre-cut light blocks that I buy at Precut. Just a lot easier than to cut these yourself. And that way your siding, they're nice and thick, the siding lines up with them really well, and the lights just mount right to these. They're really convenient to just buy them just this way. They're like, I think $7 or $8 per block, something like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pre-drill the holes for the nails, and then I'm gonna put some primer on them, let them dry. I really recommend that if you ever use these and they don't have the holes pre-drilled for the nails, to pre-drill them. This stuff normally runs with the grain of the wood, and if you use a big galvanized trim nail, one of these guys, right? One of these big old honkers, which is what I'm gonna use. That's a pretty big nail to drive through with the grain, and you'll actually, I've split these before, right? They just crack and then they're no good. So, recommend We're getting ready to do the trim around the 8x8 garage door. And I didn't film the 16x10 garage door because we had some issues that we had to figure out, and it took us quite a while to do it. But now we've done that and we've got those figured out, so we'll be able to do the same thing on the 8x8, so it should go a lot faster. I'm gonna show you the issues we ran into and explain why we had problems, and I'll show you what we did to fix those issues. When they poured my foundation, this little stem wall right here was actually angled out. And I'll show you why that's problem.
So if you can see, let me adjust the color here. Okay. So you see this piece of, where's that? This piece of trim right here. You see how it's flush with the concrete down here? And as it goes up, it comes back. That's because this concrete wall is actually kicked out. And it's pretty drastic. It's about a ½ inch out. And you can see how it is revealed all the way up, and then it gets flush at the top. We had to go buy a piece of exterior trim. This trim right here was a piece of 2x10 white wood. And I bought this at Precut. They didn't have it at Home Depot or Lowe's. Two of these pieces of wood are about $100. So I have one for this side, which we use, and then I have one for that side, which we use. The ones on the ends down there, right there, don't need to be that. But what we ended up having to do was put this on here, flush with the bottom and flush with the top, mark the back side, and then we had to cut the front to match so that the siding and the belly band and everything would look right. And it's critical that the inside be square, which it is now, even though there's a reveal here, because the garage doors need to be flush. When the garage doors come down, they need something nice and straight to line up to. So what we're gonna do to fix all of that, we'll show you what we did to fix all that with this last piece. We'll do the same thing. We'll get it up there, hold it in place with some clamps, and then we will mark it and cut it really carefully, really slowly to make sure it's cut correctly, and then that will fix the problem we're having. Also, I ended up buying a hand planer. When we framed, and this is my fault, when we framed the garage, you can see on this one side here, so this side here, how this board comes down and sits on top of this pressure treated board here. So this sits on top of this. And over here, I carried out the bottom plate over the top of this pressure treated board. I shouldn't have done that. This board, hey, my air compressor just came on. That's cool. Sorry about that. So basically, this board should have come down and sat on top of this board, and this should have been cut back. So now I've got this uneven edge here. And I bought my hand planer, a power hand planer, to basically shave this all back. Worked really well. We had the same problem down on the end down there. So as you can see, this is pretty much flush now with this upper board. This thing is invaluable. I've never owned one before, never used one until a couple days ago. Went and bought this one. I've used it now to do this one and the one over there. You could try doing this with I don't know, if you were really careful, you might be able to do it with a skill saw or something, but this just works really well. And I also used it to trim up around a window where I ended up using a 2x6 that had been cut down, excuse me, a 2x8 that had been cut down to a 2x6, but it wasn't quite dimensional. So I ended up having to shave that off. That was something I didn't notice while we were framing. Yeah, so now this is nice and flat and ready for a piece of trim to go on there. I already cut this board to length. This is the top plate of the garage door opening. Check fit it before I turn the camera on, so looks like I got to take off about I don't know, 2 blade widths, maybe 3. Okay, so I trimmed it and it fits obviously this time. I got it up there already. Harder. Get it nailed in place, and then that allows us to put the side in. The board that goes on the outside of the 8x8 door, and we actually have to plane this down for thickness because of how the concrete is poured. So we plane that down. Takes a couple of passes with that style of planer. This is the board we just planed, and this is that oversized piece of board I had to go buy because of the concrete being out. If you remember in previous videos, there's these metal earthquake straps underneath here, and so in the area underneath where this board attaches, basically from about here to the top of that metal strap, which is actually right here, we're gonna have to go use a hand power plane and take out to make a little pocket for the board to sit back flush. On there using this as a guide, and now we'll go cut this extra piece off, and that allows us to compensate for this wow in the concrete. So we cut this off, as you can see, to the line, and then we ran the hand planer over to take all the tool marks out. Now we're getting ready to nail it in. Looks like it's pretty good. Got it for a second? So that's the area where that metal strap will be at. So I just ran that board through the planer. So it should be the right thickness now. There's our reveal, that's what we're looking for. Put a couple of nails in this stuff to hold it in place because the siding is going to go on and hold it up. This creates a drip edge, so if water gets on the siding, comes down the siding and hits this and falls off the front instead of going underneath that piece of trim. This board and this board are the two boards that make up the corner, and we're going to go ahead and nail the corner together. It seems to be a lot easier to do this out of place. So we nail them together out of place, and then we go and hold them up out there and nail them on. this thing to length. Putting it up here in place. Good?
Yep.
So we're installing this, I don't know, what is it?
1.5 by.
1.5 by 3/4 piece of trim. It goes up against the bottom of the soffits. All right, bird blocking specifically. And it gives us a nice straight edge for our siding to go up against the bottom of. One of the things we are doing that a lot of people don't do is this window flange sticks out more. So if you don't relieve the back edge of your trim, it will roll down. So that's what we're doing here. We use the planer, we relieve the back edge, and now we got it up in place. Now it's nailed in. Okay, so like you saw me do above the garage door, we're doing flashing. The windows get double flashed. You put a piece of flashing over the top of the window like I'm doing here, and then we'll tack that in with a couple nails and that'll stay in place. And then we'll put we'll put the side trims up, and then we'll put the top trim up, and we'll put the next piece of flashing on. So what I'm doing right now is just installing this last piece of flashing, and when I get this all done, I'll show you what that looks like. So we got the last piece of trim. I'm going to show you, hopefully you can see that I relieved this edge quite a bit, this backside. So the flange of the window sits in here, and then this holds out on the wood. We actually go up on top like that, so that we don't get this rocking action. If you ever install a window, you know what I'm talking about. Now we got one more piece of flashing and nip the ends.
You waiting for me to cut there?
I was. Got a hammer?
I got a hammer.
Oh, I need a hammer. Thank you. So that's it. So if you watched the previous video, you saw how to do the rubberized flashing in the Tyvek, and then set the window, get all the correct overlaps, and then put the trim up, and then that double metal flashing, right? You get some flashing over the top of the windowsill, put the trim up, and then the flashing over the top of the trim. It's ready for siding. I'm kind of torn on how to position these, so we'll see how it goes. So my predicament is, do I put it here or do I put it here? I think I put it here. So by only driving 2 nails most of the way in, I can look at it for a day or 2 while we're working on siding and see if I really like it or not. And then if I decide to leave them right there, when we get to it while we're doing the siding, we'll just drive the nails in and side around them.